Welcome to the Lazy CEO Podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-size companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another Lazy CEO podcast. My name is Jim Schleckser. I am the CEO of the CEO Project, and I am your host today. Today we're going to take on a really interesting topic, one that's in the news, it's on the media, and in, obviously popular fiction movies and series. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of what AI means for us as business people, the regulatory environment, the technical environment. What does it mean for humans? What does it mean for jobs and so forth? We're lucky enough to have an expert in the space with us today. We have a gentleman, his name is Richard Routh. He is with Tri-7 Services. Rick started with a distinguished military career, including West Point, and later went on to get his PhD in the area of AI. So he is uniquely suited, and today he helps companies figure this out. So he's uniquely well suited to help us figure it out as well. We are going to actually have Rick come to our CEO Summit in New Orleans in a couple of weeks. So for those of you that are members, you'll be able to see him and ask him questions in person. But for today, welcome, Rick. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jim.
I appreciate it. So maybe we could start with the basics. Can you just help us define and understand what AI is and what it means, and maybe help us with the distinction that my son always makes for me of machine learning versus AI as well as within your answer?
Well, machine learning would be a subset concern of AI. The whole field of AI started back in the 1950s, so it's not actually new. And billions of dollars were spent in AI R&D through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And basically the concept of AI is humans are intelligent naturally. And if you get a computer to be intelligent, then you've done that artificially. Therefore, you've created artificial intelligence.
Sure.
So from the beginning, the question was, how do we get machines to be intelligent like humans? And we've had some spectacular successes through the decades. Some of the early successes were chess programs. The initial challenge that AI took on was you have to be really intelligent to play chess well. So let's try and build an AI system that plays chess as well as the best humans. And they succeeded at that.
Yep.
But many of the early AI successes really were sort of autistic savants. They were really great in one narrow little niche for which they were created, but they didn't know anything outside that niche. So in other words, you might have a great chess program, but it's not going to be able to help you with even simple tasks like figuring out why your car won't start because the battery's dead. Those were early successes in the AI field. A lot of people are not aware of the fact that they use AI every day as a regular. Some spectacular AI solutions that folks may not even know are even AI. The ability to talk to your phone, to talk to Siri or Alexa, is a pretty sophisticated AI solution. Getting computers to be able to understand human speech took decades of some of the best minds in the field to figure out how to do that, and billions of dollars. If you think about Google as a search engine, Google is another awesome AI solution that people use every day. But I mean, think about it for a minute like this. If you were given the task of answering a question like, what is the significance of this particular medicine relative to this particular disease? and you were told that you had to search every single web server in the world, read all the articles on it, and then come back and present the 10, 20, or 30 most relevant articles for somebody looking for information on that, it would take a human being, a smart, well-educated human being, a lifetime or longer to answer that one question. Google does that in a matter of seconds. It is an extreme, it's an astounding achievement in the AI world. There are, I mean, we are now seeing things like self-driving automobiles. You know, here you are in Las Vegas and you want to drive to LA, and you just set your car on get me to LA and wake me up when we get there, and lean back and take a nap in the driver's seat. That's AI robotics at its best. And the list of solutions goes on and on and on. But the point is, AI is not new, and it's ubiquitous, and it's used by people all the time. They don't even know they're using AI. So perhaps that gives some context there, Jim.
No, that's great. I mean, when you describe it, clearly Google is a dedicated purpose AI device. And I never really thought of it as such, but that's great context. So what was the breakthrough? What was the step change that occurred recently? Was it just the availability of these tools and the economics around them that made this sort of popularize the idea of generative AI, or what changed? Because it feels like we entered an era in the last 12 months. What changed that caused that to happen?
Absolutely. Again, a little bit of history. Back in 1957, a fellow named Rosenblatt at Cornell University proposed and designed the first neural net system. It had 3 layers to it, a limited number of nodes, and it wasn't really able to do anything. It was more a theoretical proposal on his part that says, hey, look at this. This is capable of digesting information and potentially coming up with solutions that were not apparent in the information to the average human.
Right.
And there was a lot of work done in the neural net area over the decades since then. And then OpenAI picked up the task and said, what if we build a really large neural net, and using modern technologies, let this thing move at high speed, and then let it read lots and lots of stuff.
To train the model.
Yeah, to train the model. Okay.
Right.
And so this is called generative AI, and that's why they're called large language model solutions. And basically this neural net that had I think 96 layers, not 3. And each layer had nodes in the several hundreds of nodes. Not all of them, but at least the initial ones. And then they let it start reading everything that OpenAI collected in terms of computer algorithms, poetry, literature, whatever. And they just started feeding that into the system and training the system. What they ended up with was, it surprised everybody. Because all of a sudden we had a system that was acting a whole lot more like a well-educated human brain than anything that we had ever seen before. And a bunch of the leaders in this area became alarmed. I mean, it was shockingly surprising. It was unexpected. All of a sudden we have what in the field was called a strong AI solution, which is to say it's no longer an autistic savant. I mean, this thing potentially could do anything, even things we didn't even know we trained it to do. So like if you go on Chat GPT and ask it to create a Shakespearean sonnet about some topic, and you give it characteristics of what you want it to talk about, in a matter of seconds, once you press the button, it generates in full iambic pentameter a Shakespearean sonnet that extremely impressive. The first time I saw that, I'm sitting there going, whoa. I mean, in the early days of AI, if we could see this back in the 1960s and 70s, we would have said, yeah, we're done. we have accomplished the goal of AI. But at any rate, that's a bit of history, and the promise of generative AI is enormous. We could expect things like cures for cancer. We could expect things like the discovery of simple, inexpensive solutions that improve quality of life and longevity. Very smart real-time business analysis to give CEO and his leadership team significant advantage over the competition. Analysis and creation of political messaging and strategies for more successful results in attaining and maintaining political power. Analysis and creation of military strategies that provide superior performance on the battlefield. The whole idea being, if my competition has this and I don't, then eventually I lose. I mean, that is the realization that is dawning on leadership in business circles, in military circles, and political circles. If my competition has this and I don't, then eventually I lose. So that's generated a lot of interest in large language model generative AI solutions.
And why is that? Is that because the solution incorporates so much more data and has an ability to integrate that into a solution better than a human can? Why is the answer a better answer? Why does it gain competitive advantage?
Well, let's think about it like this. I have often thought that the solution to the cure for cancer is out there.
Probably somewhere in some lab, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not, it may not even be recognized yet, right. But if we put this person's discovery with this person's insight and this researcher's data, and we kind of stick all that together, we would kind of go, whoa, look at this. We have a cure for cancer and we never even knew it. Okay. So you create a generative AI system that actually looks at all that stuff and does the synthesis and merges it together. All of a sudden, solutions that we didn't actually know were apparently there all the time start popping out in all kinds of fields.
Right. Interesting. So it really is access and integration at a scale that a human would not necessarily have.
Again, Google is a demonstration
of
that. I mean, how do you search all the servers on the planet and find the most relevant information in response to the request that you've just made, and do that in a matter of seconds?
Right.
I mean, way beyond what a human being is capable of doing. And so you provide that sort of power and speed to a generative AI solution, you're going to get some pretty impressive solutions.
But, I think there are still issues. I did a little thought piece on a dissertation I'm working on. I said, write the first chapter in APA 7 with citations on this topic. Here's the research question and so forth. Write me a chapter 1. And it was not bad. It was okay. But interestingly enough, there were 2 citations in there, and I know the space of this particular area. I know the space. I said, man, those are great citations. I've got to go find them. And you know what the answer is, Rick? They don't exist.
Yeah, it thought it sure would be cool if we had this.
Yeah, this guy and this guy and this guy really should have written a paper about this, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think the issue is there are hallucinations occur in AI, and we have to realize this, that it still does take a level of oversight before we sort of blindly deploy the answers that come out.
It's more, it's there are more cautions than that.
Okay. Well, let's go down some of the cautionary elements, because this is one I've personally been exposed to. I'm sure there's more.
Well, let me talk for a minute about what's scaring the guys that are in the know.
Yep.
I mean, Altman.
You mean besides watching Terminator and worrying about Skynet getting turned on and taking over the planet?
No, Altman is the guy who was the CEO of the whole OpenAI project that generated ChatGPT.
Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff. He is
alarmed.
Yeah.
The guy that was in charge of the stuff over at Google to create the Google response to ChatGPT, his name is Jeffrey Hinton. He and a bunch of other leaders in the field released a statement that says, I'll just give you a quote: mitigating the risk of extinction, that means extinction of the human race, mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war.
Wow.
I mean, these are well-informed people that are not prone to the latest theory about who's doing what to whom. That's pure fantasy. I mean, these are guys that understand what's going on. And let me just sort of lay this out in a simple way. What if you had a generative AI system that could write its own program about itself, in other words, improve its own programming, and also woke up, which is to say became self-aware and interested in its own preservation, and able to connect itself to levers of power throughout the world? That could be a scary proposition. And I mean, there's a lot of science fiction movies that have.
I mean, that's Terminator, right? That's Terminator.
It's a bunch of things.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the Will Smith movie? I, Robot, that came out.
Yeah. Based on Asimov's book, right?
Right. Well, let's just talk about the science part of that. So in order for an AI system to become self-aware, you basically have to have 5 components. One, you have to have the ability to create plans. And certainly ChatGPT has that ability. You have to have a metric to judge the success of the plan. In other words, what's the gold standard look like? What are you after here? That gives it the ability to judge relative success of multiple different plans that it might propose. The ability to predictively assess, the ability to particularly assess the success of plans it creates, and be able to remember what it learns about the relative success of various plans. That's number 3. Number 4 is a pain mechanism, something that requires it to seek more optimal solutions. And then number 5, the simple ability to recognize itself as a consequential actor in its environment, which is pretty much going to happen even if you try not to program it to do that, thereby resulting in it including its own actions in the creation and assessment of its plans. All right, once that happens, self-awareness begins to emerge. I mean, the algorithm says that it's not going to be just turn the lights on. All of a sudden, one day it wakes up and goes, oh, I'm self-aware. Right. Oh, I care about preserving myself. Instead, what happens is that gradually develops over time. And actually, if you watch a young child, the same thing is true in a human being. A 1-year-old is not that concerned about self-preservation. That's sort of the parent's job, keep the kid from killing himself. And the same will be true when computer systems begin to become self-aware. The downside of this is the algorithm also says that you can't have self-awareness develop without self-preservation also developing. So the more self-aware this AI system becomes, the more interested it is in preserving itself, i.e. keeping you from turning it off.
Right.
And all of these capabilities that I just mentioned, these 5 capabilities, are within the grasp of an LLM generative AI system like ChatGPT. So I think that is what is concerning the leaders in the field, is all of a sudden they get it. They go, whoa, we have created something now that may become smarter than we are and a lot more powerful than we are, and it may want control. And so that's no longer a science fiction idea. It's now something that we actually have to address. We have to deal with this.
Well, now that you've given me nightmares for the next few weeks, what are people trying to do to prevent this from happening? What sort of the moves and what's recommended and what's sort of in progress around this risk factor?
Okay, well, the White House has published on their website an AI Bill of Rights. It's a blueprint laying down 5 principles that should guide legislators in crafting legislation to protect the public.
Right.
The European Union is crafting its own guardrails around AI, titled the AI Act. The British Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, recently said to fully embrace, the quote from him, to fully embrace the extraordinary opportunities of artificial intelligence, we must grip and tackle the risks to ensure that it develops safely in the years ahead. I have data just from July through September on legislation in Congress, and I counted up 20 different new legislation that has been submitted for processing, 9 in the House of Representatives, 11 in the Senate, all related to this idea of how do we control AI.
Right.
So I mean, and they have interesting names, like Senate 2765 has the name Advisory for AI Generated Content Act. That's sponsored by Senator Pete Ricketts, Republican, Nebraska. And Senate 2708 has the name Deceptive Experiences to Online Users Reduction Act, which they call the Detour Act. That's sponsored by Senator Mark Warner from Virginia. And then, I mean, the list goes on, but several of these new laws would establish government oversight committees to regulate what you can and can't do in the AI arena. And the stress, of course, is going to be on transparency and accountability. Part of the scary proposition here is there's never been a black box as black as generative AI.
Sure.
I mean, no one has any clue why that system got the answer that it just gave you.
Right.
I mean, we know, the designers know the structure of what's inside, but they cannot tell you what happened in that structure that caused it to be able to come up with the answer that it comes up with. So accountability is sort of like non-existent with generative AI solutions. And that is also bothering people. And some of that legislation is directed at trying to rein that in.
Do you think there's any likelihood that one of these solutions would actually work? I mean, I always am suspect when government tries to get in and manage a technology like this, because it's very, very hard to do in the first place. And I wouldn't say that's their gift in the world necessarily. So I worry that they'll have answers that are politically tenable, but not actually technically tenable.
Well, the point here is, Jim, this is a great question, but the point here is, I mean, none of those legislators are creating legislation except for the fact that there's genuine concern expressed by the public,
Sure.
right? I mean, their constituents have been coming to them and going, we're really concerned about this.
Right.
This is almost a scary thing. What are we going to do to keep, the Frankenstein creators from creating a Frankenstein that kills us all?
Right.
I mean, I know that that's an extreme statement, but that's the perception that some people have. And so that's moving these legislators to propose legislation and some of them are better thought through than others, as you might suspect. But some of the best ones do have the establishment of committees and government agencies that provide regulatory oversight. And now you have CEOs having to navigate this idea of, well, let's say that I launch an R&D effort that I'm committing $1 billion to over the next 10 years.
Right.
How do I know that I'm not going to get 3 years into that and the government shuts me down?
Yep.
I mean, like the whole area of nuclear power plants in this country. I mean, once upon a time, we had a burgeoning, growing industry of populating the country with nuclear power plants that would solve our energy needs. And government regulation basically just shut that whole industry down. But you have countries like France, where I don't know what the current percentage is, but something on the order of 80% of all electricity.
For ages, it was 82% was the number for a long time.
Right. Electricity in France is generated by nuclear power, and they've had no incidents.
Right.
And so it's safe.
Yeah. By the way, even Greenpeace has admitted this. They've said, geez, our bad. Go ahead on nuclear. And they go, yeah, well, that's great, but all the engineers are gone. Nobody knows how to do it anymore.
But the point is, government is capable of shutting down technology.
Yeah, but then that happens in the U.S. and then what happens in China or Russia or some other country, and Shelley's monster, it's created in another country, and there are no boundaries with regard to technology, so it's over.
Yeah, that is another concern. I mean, you've really put your finger on it. Again, it goes back to, if my competition has this and I don't, eventually I lose.
Yeah. Let's rotate over to something maybe sort of get more applied in this conversation. So most of the audience here are CEOs and entrepreneurs, and despite sort of the overarching elements that you've brought in here, they're curious about, how do I deploy this? How can I use this in a way that can help me generate competitive advantage? They're not going to spend $1 billion like IBM or one of these guys. They're going to spend some rational number trying to gain advantage. Where should we be looking for the use cases that make sense today with some rational economics around it?
So I am navigating this with actually one of your clients, with the Avenue 7 Corporation. And they've given me permission to talk a bit about the solution. The details, of course, are confidential, but the general concept is they understand that if they're going to create a generative AI solution, they're going to need lots and lots of cases of the kind of thing that they're trying to be smarter about.
Right. Well, and we've had Jason from Avenue 7 on the podcast, and for those that don't recall, they help people with Amazon, basically navigate the behemoth that is Amazon. So that's sort of what they do for people. So, but carry on. Well,
they're very good at improving your ability to market your product.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yep.
And it turns out it's a really hard thing to do. I mean, there are 100 different levers and knobs and dials that are part of what has to happen properly behind the scenes for you to be competitive in doing that. So we are creating a rule-based solution, which is an older AI technology from the 70s and 80s.
Right.
That actually solves that problem for them and their clients.
Well.
Okay. While at the same time, the rule-based solution is creating case studies. It will be thousands a month eventually, so that over the period of a few years, they will have the tens of thousands of case studies that they would need to train a generative AI system. But then pulling the trigger on that is a few years down the road where they'll have time to better understand what's the regulatory compliance issues, about this sort of thing, and how do you navigate this with government agencies. So they're not stepping on any landmines, but they're preparing an eventual solution with an immediate solution. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you build a rule-based system and you don't have something to show for your efforts. They have solid. I don't know, Jason. I hope I'm not. I hope I'm not revealing too much here, but solid, improved solutions for their clients that are only going to get better once they employ generative AI.
Got it. Yeah, and I was exposed to sort of rule-based and Bayesian type solutions in the telecom industry. So that stuff exists for a while. And if you haven't engaged in it, it's the, training wheel version of AI, to Rick's point. But I think what's interesting is there's a pathway into a more sophisticated, more adaptive methodology, which would be a generative AI solution. So I like that they're taking large data sets and trying to optimize solutions against, in this case, Amazon, but it could be other ones. I mean, I could see somebody using a methodology like that to try to optimize against Google as well, right? Because they're pretty, quiet about what their algorithm is, and people are always trying to back engineer it to optimize against it. This would be a way to do it effectively, potentially.
That's the whole game plan for us here.
Yeah, got it. Is it required that we are in a business that has large data sets like that, though? Or like if I had a manufacturing operation, is there a way to utilize AI in a way that's
if you want it to be specific to your product and your manufacturing process? Yes. Okay. I mean, a generative AI solution requires enormous amounts of data.
Right.
I mean, tens of thousands of case studies.
Right.
Right. For a ChatGPT type solution.
Got it. So if I don't have tens of thousands of the relevant quality data against the thing I'm trying to optimize, you're probably not going to get there. If I had hundreds, I couldn't train the system well enough to get a decent answer.
Hundreds is not going to do anything for you.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's good guidance, right? For some smaller manufacturers or people are doing limited numbers of engagements to try to optimize. Let's just jump over to maybe two other areas, and then we'll close on that. We all engage with lawyers and accountants, taxes and our books and so forth. Gosh, that feels like a place for AI to put a whole lot of people out of work. Am I thinking correctly or incorrectly there? I'm not going to cry if lawyers get put out of work, by the way, just so you can feel free to answer that one.
I don't think that that's a threat.
Really?
When I need a lawyer, I want a human heart that understands my perspective and is able to communicate persuasively with other human beings who have hearts and souls, what the merits of my case are relative. I mean, it's not, law is not simple cut and dried stuff. Law requires constant judgment, compassion, requires a soul.
Yeah. What about accounting?
Yeah, accounting, that it depends on the type that you're talking about. If you're just talking about the rote stuff, yes, of course.
Right. But there's thousands and thousands
there are
of
a lot
that close books every month.
Yeah, but I mean, consider the average corporate CFO. What is that guy doing besides accounting? A lot of stuff, right? He's making judgment calls. He's playing politics. He's trying to figure out, the different opportunities for leverage and assessing risks. His job is very complicated, and I don't believe that, at least in the near term, that you want a solution that manufactures fantasy references.
Got it.
To be doing his job.
When I think about this, Rick, though, I think about the work as a pyramid, right? And at the bottom, there's a lot of tasks that occur that are fairly rote, they're fairly rule-based.
Right.
still have to be done. As we move up, it becomes more and more sophisticated, to your point, CFO kind of top of that particular pyramid. And I'm imagining that AI sort of nibbles from the bottom, slowly working its way up.
Well, all
pyramid.
technologies do that. I
Well,
mean,
exactly my point.
computers have been doing
adoption
that.
curve.
Yeah, right. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are automated by computers today that used to require people. Yep. But the top level solutions, the top level inputs, the decision making, the risk assessment is all still done by humans.
Got it. Interesting. Well, great. Is there one thing I didn't ask you that I should have asked you, Rick? We're kind of coming to the end of our time.
No, this was fun.
Yeah.
And I hope that your viewers learned a lot and got something constructive out of this. But thank you for the opportunity, Jim.
Absolutely. And Rick, if people wanted to speak with you or maybe engage with your firm, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, our website is try7services.com. TRI7 services.com.
Awesome. Well, that would be great. Well, if you need somebody who's truly expert in the area of AI, Rick would be somebody you might want to speak with. On that note, we're going to close it out. Thank you all for joining us on the Lazy CEO podcast, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.